All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your guide here at Simple Scrapper. I want to welcome you to this week's episode of Simple Scrapper Live. This is my weekly video broadcast that is delivered right here in our Crowdcast classroom. So if you aren't yet in Crowdcast, you need to follow that link to jump over where you can participate live with your fellow scrapbooking peers, as well as submit questions for me to answer on the broadcast. And also, by jumping over to Crowdcast, that gives me your email address, and it helps me make sure that you can be invited to the next episode. I'm here each and every week at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays to talk a little bit about scrapbooking. We dig deep into a specific topic every week. And today I'm really looking forward to talking about connection and community. The title of today's episode is The Secret Sauce Your Hobby Might Be Missing. And I'm just going to kind of give it away here at the beginning because I have a lot of different things I want to talk about. And that's that you, as an individual scrapbooker, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you need connection with other women. And each of you out there has that to some degree. But we live in a world where the internet can help us go even deeper and develop even more of those connections, particularly if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of close girlfriends around. And if you do have girlfriends, maybe they're just not into scrapbooking or some of the things that you're into, and this online community can help balance that for you. Excuse me. So again, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your guide here at Simple Scrapper. Simple Scrapper is a website that I created in 2008 as a way to document my own journey in modern memory keeping. At that time, I really thought that digital scrapbooking was going to be the way of simplicity, but it turned out it is just one of the ways. And so at Simple Scrapper, I help memory keepers of all kinds, whether you are paper, digital, project life, you do traveler's notebooks, you make committee books, you make photo books, you document on social media. I help everyone who considers themselves a memory keeper to move forward with more joy, more ease, get more out of their hobby, and do it with purpose and intention. And we do that by thinking about things and teasing it apart. And so that's why today we're going to pick that one little topic, and we're going to talk about this aspect of online relationships and how the online community can support you as a memory keeper and supplement what you may or may not have in the real world. Because, we're in a unique place where there's this blurring of lines between online and off. I remember a decade ago, it felt very separate. But now today, I have met so many women offline that I've met originally on the internet, that I've met you guys from the creative community. And this blurring of lines has made it more accessible and more accepted. And I think sometimes we can be a little nervous about making friendships with people we really don't know. And there's that fear element of what's really real, and can this translate offline? So we're all coming to the table here because it's, I think we can agree that it's hard to make friends as adults. I see this posted on Facebook all the time. I've read articles written about it. I think this is a common theme among adult women, is that the older you get, the harder it is to develop genuine relationships. And those when they do happen, they tend to form around something you have in common. Because as women, we need that kind of identity-based connection. We need to be able to have that warm, fuzzy feeling that comes when someone says, oh, same here, or me too. Or when you find out that, for example, that you went to the same high school and you didn't even know it. Or that your kids sit together every day at lunch, but you hadn't heard about that yet. When you can, or even better, when you find out that somebody's a scrapbooker and you had no idea. I think the warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you have that identity connection with someone else, we find that more and more online because we can self-select into these groups of people who like similar things. And as women, we also need this kind of the ability to swap war stories and share advice, either with folks going through it at the same time or to have mentorship from those who've already been through that. And that could be in life and in your creative hobbies. We know that there's a value to this, yet we are increasingly feeling lonely and isolated and ever more disconnected, even though we are physically and electronically connected more than ever. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end, because I know there's this kind of ongoing kind of disconnect / tension between wanting that connection and going online to seek it, yet how do we do that in a way that actually is effective and fulfilling and not just perpetuating behaviors that are ultimately not fulfilling? So I'll get back to that in a minute. Again, if you are joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, I want to encourage you to jump over to the Crowdcast link so that you can participate live. And if you are here on Crowdcast, please do click the Ask a Question button where you can submit a question for me to answer towards the end here. Each of these episodes of Simple Scrapper Live, I go about 20 minutes or so, depending on the topic, just to give you a time parameter there. All right. So we can agree that the internet has no doubt made it easier for these friendships. And I know that if you're here, you're watching this, you're already online connected in some way, and you may be more used to using this type of technology to watch someone live talk to you about scrapbooking. But maybe your friends aren't, and they don't even know that kind of thing exists. And I think that we're still in almost an early adopter phase. We're still very early to where I think this is going to go in the future. But I think we've all seen that when you make that time to show up to Simple Scrapper Live or one of our member chats, or to show up in a challenge that's on some other website, or to post in a comment to an Instagram post, that when you show up and participate, even if you don't feel ready or totally prepared, you get value out of it. There's that sense of camaraderie from being part of the group. I think that's why my classes are so popular, and why so many people I've heard over the past few years have missed the old big picture classes, because there was that sense of camaraderie around taking an action-based class all at once and going through it together, that shared experience. And of course, as I've mentioned, these online relationships that you develop often turn offline. I know one of our members, April, she has this group of online girlfriends that she met, and that they now connect offline, and they travel together and scrapbook together and go to crops. Our teaching assistant, Kim, has met several other of the Simple Scrapper members who live in her area, and they crop together offline. So it's this amazing way to find other scrapbookers who maybe they don't live in your town, but they live in the next town over, and you can arrange some things that you can meet up and continue to develop those relationships. Or maybe you don't meet. Maybe you use your phone or your computer to FaceTime or Skype. Recently at our last member retreat refresh, we did these live crops where I got a chance to bring other folks up on the screen here with me, and we could see what we were working on. It was this very, very real way of being in the same space without actually being in the same space. We could be from the comfort of our homes, yet still connecting live about what we're working on, how we feel about it, what we're thinking. And something about that is it's so incredible that we can do it, and the technology is only improving to make it easier and easier. So at the same time, we've identified this common ground that we need these relationships, that they can be really fruitful, that it's important, but we're all so unique. We have different reasons for showing up at any one time. We go through seasons in our life. We go through ebbs and flows of how we're feeling, what our interests are. You know, one of the things that I've learned, since Simple Scrapper is often very focused on what you need personally, what is your goal right now, and how can we support you to get there, that everyone is on a different path of personal growth and development. Everyone is interested in different things, in building their skills and growing their skills and developing habits in different ways and for different reasons. And I think that's one of the reasons that can lead to frustration with making these online relationships. Because I know that you've joined a forum or a Facebook group or participated in a challenge or been some part of some online group, and it just didn't feel right. And for as many as that maybe did like flow really well and you found your tribe, there were ones where you felt disconnected. You didn't feel part of the group. And I think that's when there's a misalignment of what you want and what that group is about. And it can't just be on the topic, because I know there's hundreds of scrapbooking groups out there, but not everyone is going to be right for you. So you have to ask yourself questions. Are you being like pushed to do things that aren't in your current comfort zone, like pushed to always buy more things? Or are you being encouraged to use your stash? Are you being asked to pause and take time to think about what you really want? Or are you being encouraged to follow along? And I'm not saying either of these is right or wrong, but you have to figure out what suits you and what you need right now. And do you feel that like the sense of being in sync with the group's goals and values? Or do you feel like you don't get it or you're an outsider? And when you take time to consider the fit, like, is this group filling me up? Is this community what I need right now? You'll have a better experience, and you're more likely to develop not only kind of group relationships that are supportive, but one-on-one relationships that can even become, blossoming long-term friendships. And then, so what am I going to say here? I mean, this is a tricky topic. I don't want to pretend that it's not. And it's hard to talk about because it shouldn't be hard, but it is. But I think one of the things that the online space can do is it takes away the pressure of that initial one-on-one. Yes, there's opportunities to identify common ground and say, oh, I live in the same town as you, or I went to the same college, or, I have kids the same age. And that kind of can plant the seed of a future relationship, but you have the comfort of a group. And I think that's one of the things that makes it even easier and kind of takes away that pressure versus, like sometimes we call it mom dating here, that, you don't have to text someone or send them an email or call them up. You can kind of make that relationship a little bit smoother by being within a group of like-minded women. And then over time, you may develop a further relationship with that one individual. All right, I want to transition now to kind of some of the concerns that I've heard before. And there's this conflict between wanting this online connection, yet wanting to maintain a healthy balance between the time you spend online, using it well, and not getting sucked in. And I'm not going to pretend that we don't most of us commonly get sucked in. And I know that I do. I find myself scrolling when I could be using that time more effectively. But I want to share kind of some thoughts to underpin that idea as we're talking about what one of these goals would be, to develop future relationships. And even more so than just the one-on-one friendships, but just to feel that sense of community, the community of women. They've talked about the idea of it takes a village. And those types of sentiments we don't see as much in the real world. There's no more, there are fewer and fewer real life scrapbooking stores. Our closest one is more than an hour away. There were none in this town when I moved here. The last one had just closed when I moved here almost 10 years ago. And so it's harder and harder to develop those communities of women to support you. And maybe you have that in some other ways, but maybe not for your creative journey and your personal journey and the way you want to grow and develop. So how do you maintain that balance? first of all, I want to remind you that you are in control of what you share and what stays private. And I think that can be one of the hesitations. Maybe this is your first time watching me on a crowdcast. Maybe you kind of dabble once in a while in Facebook, but you're just not sure. You hear so many bad things. And I want to give you reassurance that if you want to participate more, there's a lot of abilities to have control, and it's not just controlling you. So that's kind of just, I wanted to set the stage there. But if you are concerned about that balance of online time versus off, I want you to know that you get to choose how you want to spend that time. Some of you may be registered for the workshop I'm teaching tonight on Fuel Your Creative Fire, and I'll share more about that at the end here. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is that you need to make choices that fill you up, and you have to do that consistently. And it's hard. It is hard to do that when you already have ingrained, automatic, not even always conscious habits to do something else, things that aren't filling you, aren't fueling you, and aren't nourishing to you. But ultimately, you do get to make the choice. And so when you go into spending time online with that awareness and knowing how you want to spend that time, you're more likely to use it well. Kind of more practically here, if you do spend time on Facebook, I find it's helpful to jump right into the groups that I am most interested in at that time, whether that's a recipe group or scrapbooking or something else. Jump into the group instead of scrolling the wall and what's presented to you, because that's going to be everything that you're interested in. And that's what can cause, distraction and going down too many paths and multitasking that's ultimately kind of fruitless because you don't get anything done because you've been sent all these different directions. By going into a single group, you can focus. I know that when I'm making my menu plan on the weekend, I will often go into one of my Facebook groups and see what other folks are cooking and eating, because that gives me ideas. But I need to focus. I'm not going to scroll my wall in hopes that I come across something that helps me do that. And then finally here, you can also use apps or other tools to help kind of limit your time or control it, so that you are giving yourself boundaries. If you know that you're spending online time in a way that's not engaging, that's not helping you connect with others, you're just scrolling and surfing and taking quizzes and then ultimately, feeling unfulfilled and going off to do something else, you can use a time block or use a timer or use an app that controls what apps you can access to kind of give yourself that structure, like, asking a technology to be your parent here to help you make better decisions and spend that time more wisely. Because when we're under the gun, when we have constraints, we're more likely to do the thing that we set out to do versus just idly surfing. All right, I'm going to check on the questions here. I want to invite you to submit any questions that you want me to ask. This topic's been a little bit different, a little bit abstract. Thank you guys for bearing with me today. Let's see. Oh, Betty Lou has a great question here that makes a connection. She says, I don't know how to create those blur spots on the photos I take of my layouts that allow me to share my work, but not worry about sharing too much. I'd love a blog post or something to learn the basics. I have not yet Googled this topic because it only comes up at specific times. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways. Obviously, you can use Photoshop or Photoshop elements. You can often create a layer over your photo or your layout to blur that specific thing. You can also do like just a blackout. You can even do this with apps on your phone, though, especially ones that have additional layers or ones that can create even a box where you can white out something. But that's a really interesting point, and I think that the concern about sharing too much, whether that's photos of other people or your own personal journaling, can prevent someone from getting more engaged with an online community because they're nervous about sharing at work. So that's certainly something that we can help, and I can try to find some tutorials on that as well, because I'm sure you're not the first person to have that problem, and somebody else has probably blogged about it as well. So while we're seeing if there's any other questions coming in here, I want to mention two things that we have going on right now. One is that I am hosting it's a big day, hosting another workshop tonight. This one's a full hour on Fuel Your Creative Fire. Let me see if I can pull up the link for you guys real quick. I did not promote this that heavily to folks that were already on my list because I've been using it to try to attract some new folks, but everyone is definitely welcome to attend. This is very much an offshoot of last week's Simple Scrapper Live. So last week on Tuesday, I talked about the tension, the sadness, the heaviness that we felt this year, and especially more recently, and how we can acknowledge that and then move out of it and know that we are better people when we continue to be creative and support our own self-care. And so tonight's workshop is really going more into that second part on how do you stay creative when you don't feel like it. I'm going to give you lots of ideas of different practices. So I talked a little bit about that at the end of last week's Simple Scrapper Live. We're going to go into more detail tonight, not so much on the tension aspect, because I think I really set the stage in that episode of why we're feeling so heavy and how that's impacting us as scrapbookers and creatives, that it's hard to express yourself when there feels like there's so much going on. And do you even have that right? So there's even like the guilt of who am I to be playing around with my pretty papers when people are suffering? And my answer to that is that you can only show up as your best to give to your family and friends and to those in your community who may be struggling or elsewhere who may need your help. You can only bring your best when you're taking care of yourself first. And so that's what we'll be talking about tonight. I do have the link here. I'll put that in the chat. All right, so it's crowdcast.io/e/fuel, and you can find that via our Crowdcast bio as well. So that's tonight at 8:30 at our regular time. And then one other thing is, if you're not yet a member right now, anyone who becomes a member before September 17th is getting a 12-episode video series called Nourish added to your account. And all of our members currently have this, but I'll be taking that away as of September 17th. It's something that I created starting at the end of last year and the beginning of this year as a way to reconnect with kind of self-care principles and how those fundamentals really connect to your creativity. So if this conversation and conversations we've been recently having resonate with you, then I'd like to encourage you to become a member. You can click the Become a Member button inside of Crowdcast, or it's just at go.simplescrapper.com/join, and you can find that all over our website as well. So that's the special deal we have going on through September 17th. I'm going to check and see if we have any other questions right now. Doesn't look like any. So here's what I want to leave you with. You know the value of friendships, and hopefully you have women in your life that the ones you go to and are supportive and fill you up. But they might not be scrapbookers. If they are, you are super lucky. But they can be. You can have more people who are part of your everyday life who are scrapbookers. And that just means that you need to show up in the online space, not just lurk. I know there's so many of you out there who watch me and other people on YouTube, and you're more of a lurker than a participator. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if you are craving more connection, then it helps to show up in a more present way, to share who you are, what you're working on, what's interesting to you, what your challenges are, so that you can receive the support and encouragement you need. Just like you have the friends where you ask, how do you, I asked a friend this morning, how do you remove cat pee smell from things that you can't smell, but the cat can still smell it? And she recommended Nature's Miracle. So those types of things, how do you, you can develop those types of relationships with other scrapbookers by getting more involved in communities and getting out of that kind of lurking habit. And hopefully I've shared some ideas today to help you kind of not feel nervous about that, how to balance that with your desire to maybe live a more simple life that's slightly more disconnected from all the technology, and how you can identify communities that resonate with you and that feel aligned with what's important to you, because there's so many options and you kind of have to figure out, okay, is this group right for me? And if that happens to be Simple Scrapper, I'd love to see you inside of our membership. But if it's not, there's so many others, and I hope you find your kind of comfort zone in your online home where you can add that secret sauce to your hobby. And that secret sauce is friendship, connection, and community with other women who share your love of this hobby. All right, guys, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your guide here at Simple Scrapper. I am so thrilled that you were able to spend time with me either live here today or in watching the replay, and I hope you found it valuable. I will see you next week for another episode of Simple Scrapper Live.